Early on in Minecraft development, Notch handed the creation of structures to Jeb, who is great at the procedural generation required. The entity was the last structure to be primarily created by Jeb though.
When I created this, I didn't want to use any stone or anything that come from the overworld or nor netherrack or anything like that.
The next structure was the Willen Mansion, and we know that
back then it was really tricky to do structures. We didn't have like a good system.
There is, however, a stark contrast between the start and the end of these structures made by Jeb, because the last couple of structures had new blocks specifically designed for them, with purple end blocks for this and prismarine for the ocean monument. Compare that to the jungle temple and the abandoned mineshaft, and you'll see there's a clear trend that the older a structure is, the fewer new blocks it actually uses, and if you compare that to the newest Minecraft structure, it uses almost exclusively new blocks that came in the same update as it. And so I have a big question, which is, what if the trial chamber, the revamp to the dungeon, was not made in 2024, but instead was made for 1.8 beta back in 2011? What would it look like? How would it function? Today I want to explore those questions while also showing you the weirdest things you can do with this new structure and the update as it is. So let's start with the biggest bit first, which is downgrading the trial chambers. If we're going to take the trial chamber back in time effectively, there's two pieces of research we're going to need to do. The first is going to be looking at the earliest version of the trial chambers to see what the vibes for the structure were before they properly solidified it into modern day Minecraft blocks. That should help us out a lot. And the other thing is going to be looking at the blocks available in 1.0. That's going to be the update we use to work out what we can map the new blocks onto with regards to the old blocks. So looking at the oldest version we saw of the trial chambers in video, this is the Minecraft live reveal of last year, and honestly, even though the structure doesn't have all of the same rooms, it looks shockingly similar to what we did get in June of this year. There were months of development in between, but as you can see, they stuck fairly closely to this original vision, with only the chambers themselves actually changing, and so the further back we can look is actually going to be into the concept art. This was revealed just before the final release of 1.21, and it shows, as you can see, that the structure didn't originally intend for any new fancy blocks, but instead, like a ghost that can only speak enchantment table language, it relied on these mystic runes to get the message across that it was meant to be an ancient and untouched place. This is a crucial piece of information if we're trying to do any redesigns to the structure, but if we take the structure as it is, we need to know what blocks we can actually map onto it, and so that's going to require looking at the 1.0 creative inventory, and oh my god, I knew there weren't many blocks in Minecraft at that point, but seriously, there was just one item selection screen, and this is every single block, and honestly, counting some of these as blocks is really kind of questionable. Like, is a torch or a button or some rails or the lily pads or the saplings really a block that we can use? The same is true for bedrock or diamonds. They might as well effectively not be true, and as Jeb mentioned earlier, he wanted to make sure that when he was creating structures, he didn't use anything from a different dimension, so that means we also have to rule out the nether blocks here. Thankfully, given that this is 2011, that's only 3 separate blocks plus 3 for the nether fortress. It's seriously 6 blocks that make up the entire nether at this point, but yep, that's true, and there's only one exclusive block to the end, so we do have a lot of access to a lot of different blocks, but now it's the time to go and look at the modern day trial chamber and work out what we can replace each individual block with. Obviously, we lose access to the entire concept of tuff and copper, which the entire structure is made of, because both of these came in the Caves and Cliffs update, and so instead we need to find a replacement for the most common blocks. Tuff bricks are the obvious one to start with, and although they didn't exist whatsoever, and neither did deep slate or blackstone bricks, there was a suspiciously similar looking block in 1.0 that we can use instead, but copper is a little bit harder to replace because I would have used redstone blocks. In my mind, they are so old, it would have fit the concept art so perfectly, but redstone blocks didn't exist until 1.5, and so we're a little limited on what we can do there. We could use wool or we can use bricks, basically. However, we're a little bit more in luck because there's a lot of blue in this structure from the aged copper, and that can be replicated with lapis. This seems horrifically OP, but honestly, having an entire structure made out of copper could be argued the same, and so this would be a great source of replacing your lapis mining, something which gets extra powerful and extra updates. So actually, this seems like a decent fit. And then we could just add some redstone torches and some jack-o'-lanterns to replace the light, and those things alone should help us get a lot closer to that original vision. Let's go to the trial chamber and replace those blocks now. So to actually do this in Minecraft without having to use external tools, there's going to be one command which is going to be our savior, and that is the /fill command. By typing /fill and then typing some coordinates, we can tell it to fill all of the blocks in that range with, say, tough bricks, and then it will do precisely that, making a big old cube off them. This is something that can only be used to make precise cubes unless you also use it with the replace command, in which case we could say, you know, all of these jungle leaves would be better off as crafters. So we type crafter, replace, and then jungle leaves. And by doing that, we let Minecraft know that anything in that range that is currently a jungle leaf should be a crafter instead. And wow, don't all of these trees look much better as a result of that? Yes, I think we can all agree they don't. Anyway, with that said, now we're going to go underground, and then we can apply the logic from that command in reverse. We can take our new features, the tough bricks, and turn them into something much older, the stone bricks. So stone brick, replace tough bricks. Wow, it looks so similar, yet so different. But now we need to do that, but on a much larger scale, and so we set the parameters for our command to be much larger. Let's say 40 blocks by 40 blocks by 20 blocks. That should cover a healthy amount, I would hope. And just like that, our trial chamber looks a little older, except as you can see, the walls aren't exclusively made of tough bricks. There's a lot of these chiseled bricks and some polished stuff out here as well. These need to have replacement blocks picked too, and this is a hard one to do. If we were really committing to the theme of this place, we'd replace them with chiseled stone bricks, and that would be wonderful, but these blocks actually came in 1.2, although they're very handy for the jungle temple, we can't use them today, and so instead we've got to decide on the fly between mossy stone bricks and cracked stone bricks. And honestly, they both kind of work, right? But I think just a little bit better is this block here to give a bit more color to a structure that might be losing some soon. Okay, just a little bit of a problem here. Minecraft only sees 3 separate blocks that have mossy anywhere in the title. Mossy cobblestone stairs, and mossy stone underscore brick underscore stairs. But that doesn't cover what we're trying to make here. And so apparently this is one of the blocks they haven't flattened yet. So you have to type this very messy command, and then you can type replace chiseled tough brick, which is already a long title, but then we can fill them and replace them, which is what we'll do for the structure now. It's looking a little nicer already, right? Now, for another obvious block, we've got the ceiling, currently made out of polished tuff. I wish we could replace it with polished andesite, but instead we'll use polished stone, or stone as it's known. Doesn't this one change make the place already feel just a little bit more ancient? I mean, I know it's below the deep slate layer, but we're gonna have to imagine for now. Or do we? Okay, now we need to move into the slightly more controversial changes. I think this blue and orange copper look works really well together, but obviously these blocks are impossible to imagine in 1.8 beta, and so, I'm sorry. Oh my god, it's so ugly. Just as a fun fact, by the way, what do you call this block right here? Because in the game code, it's called the brick block. However, waxed copper is just called wax copper, unless it's not waxed, in which case it's the copper block. Minecraft IDs are very, very confusing. And now we've covered about 95% of the structure. We only have a few straggler blocks, which obviously need to go, but in their place we can have questions about stuff like these stairs, which logically should be lapis blocks, but if we try to actually do that, it looks just a little bit silly, doesn't it? And so I think what we instead have to do is go around the place and decide to replace each of these staircases with the only stairs that we have access to, stone brick stairs. This could be a nice little fit for something like this, maybe? Or with brick stairs. Because this is taking over one of the copper accents, it kind of makes sense to use brick for the other one, but also it feels a bit wrong in some cases too. So I think a case-by-case basis is how we'll resolve this one. Right here, I think bricks look a little bit weird, so we'll switch to stone bricks instead. Over here, I think stone bricks would look boring given the amount of stone around it, so we'll use regular bricks instead. I think a case-by-case basis is also how we're going to replace these trial spawners with monster spawners. It's more or less the exact same thing, just using existing technology rather than coding complicated new things that need to check stuff. This looks great to me. Although I guess if we're going to make these, we should probably also make sure the blocks around them make some sense. I think this is a decent fit for the spider spawners. Okay, when it comes to solution to lighting, there's literally only 3 solutions you have back in this age of Minecraft. One of these is the torch, which feels weird. One of these is glowstone, which comes from a different dimension, which Jeb himself explicitly rules out later with the end city, and so that leaves us with just the jack-o'-lantern, which seems silly on the surface to replace something like that with something like this, but then as you actually go around and start doing it, it almost changes the feel of the place in quite a drastic way. that honestly I kind of like. But then when it comes to chests, I think about how there's a few chests around the place that have nothing in them. This is something we probably need to remove. There just aren't enough items to need the inventory management. And so instead, what if we remove all the chests and all the barrels, and then we take advantage of the vaults to have traditional loot chests? It's sad to see the decorated pots go, but what can we do about it? And while we're in this middle room anyway, we can make one of the very tiny adjustments that these beds need. We obviously can't have one of those here. We'll also have to make sure we get all the doors that we see. I mean, it's a bit weird, but it's one we have to do. And now we have one of Minecraft's most elite looking chests, if I'm being totally honest. Oh, there's actually some slabs over here. You know, we can replace those with those. There we go. Look at that. We have the equivalent of the vault if you were to go into them about 14 years earlier. Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is how it would be, right? You'd find the mace in some of these chests, and this is how it would have been as recently as a couple of updates ago. It's not a bad system, but it is interesting to see them going another way, because anywhere else in the structure that there would be a chest will confuse you and make you not realize about how good these ominous ones are. And so yeah, the ominous chests are protected mostly by their location and by the mob spawners which are nearby, such as in this case, where, wow, look at that. There's, oh, we didn't get the thing behind this because it was a full block. We throw a chest down here, and then we grab our bricks from before, and we replace them like so. Except, you know, I don't really love this. I think we have to use slabs. There we go, much better. That is now a regular vault chest, and this is our ominous vault chest. But this means we have two decisions left to make, and it is what to do with these. This was formerly waxed chiseled copper, and now it is a couple of smooth stone slabs. I don't think this is terrible by itself. It kind of fits into the theme of the rest of it, but I also don't love it. I feel like you could do better than this. And so, could it be that another block from the structure works there instead? Maybe. I think we've used basically the entire overworld besides wood at this point. And so I do think that as weird as it is, smooth stone slabs ×2 are going to come in handy over here. And now we just have to go around and really make sure we round off all the last details, because every now and then there's a block that just didn't get replaced or didn't get destroyed. I feel like it's like living in a mansion where you're pretty sure it'd be great and everything, but the moment you think you've changed all the bulbs, you look around and you realize that there's still some missing. Welcome to the grand tour of my trial chamber that has recently been downgraded. This is the first place that you... No, damn it, there's one more. If you were to come across the trial chamber for the first time after it released in 2011, your first thought would probably be just how many manufactured goods you can find at such a large scale. Some people have argued that finding this much lapis lazuli in a structure would be OP, but ultimately lapis lazuli was just a decoration block. It wasn't used in enchanting at this stage, and so finding it in this larger quantity alongside bricks, because obviously there was no easy access to clay, and so therefore no easy access to bricks, would actually mean that you could get two very easy building blocks just for coming into here and using a pickaxe to mine it. Obviously, that wouldn't be the main point of the structure though, because you'd also be able to come in here for the very valuable loot, but it would be defended by some zombie, skeleton, or spider spawners. This would be kind of like a dungeon, but instead of having cobblestone walls, which only go 5 blocks wide, effectively go 70 or 100 blocks wide, making a giant chamber and a giant mess of structures which are there to defend some of the rare chests you could find within. And so this is what it would look like if you were to simply map out old blocks onto new blocks into a trial chamber, and as you can see, it's not too bad when you do precisely that, but I also think it's fair to say that when Minecraft were making new structures at this point, they weren't creating entirely new block sets like with the Ocean Monument or the End City, but they were starting to introduce a few new blocks here or there. So the Nether Fortress, for example, does have 3 new blocks, and so too does the Stronghold, and so even though I think the Abandoned Mineshaft doesn't, and many other blocks do not, I think it would be fair to say that if they were introducing the trial chambers in the same update, they might also give it 3 new blocks. And so rather than creating 3 new blocks to imagine what they would have made, let's instead assume that inside the head of a Minecraft developer were the next couple years of Minecraft updates, and so let's pick 3 blocks from there. My obvious first choice is going to be the block of redstone. This is going to allow me to give it that initial concept art vibe. I think there's a lot of places where bricks are used, that something like this would be much better. The second choice is a chiseled stone brick. It should help me in certain places where just, you know, a brick just doesn't seem right. If we replace it with a brand new block, we can start to create a bit more of a mystical structure, in my opinion. And then finally, I think there's a bit of a controversial one, but the cobblestone wool will probably be good for helping make the spawners and and certain parts of the structure actually feel that way. And so let's use these 3 blocks and see what that does for us. First though, I am going to be filling up some chests because I think that one of the biggest problems with early days Minecraft compared to today is just how grindy it was to find ender pearls, so I think having a structure that could give you some loot that would help you with the nether, and some loot that would save you some massive time in the overworld could be pretty darn good. But yeah, I'm mostly going to start by taking some areas like this that just don't really perfectly work with the blocks they have, and removing some of this to replace with some, obviously we'll remove that and put some stone brick there, and then we'll put some patterns on the walls to represent the mystical nature of this area. Okay, I made the exact pattern that they used on the concept art twice, and it looks so bad in both cases that I don't think I can in good conscience keep this, right? No, I don't think that's okay. Weirdly, it's much better when you replace it with red wool. Does that tell me that we shouldn't be using the redstone block? I think it does, to be totally honest with you. There's already lapis lazuli here, so another mineral block might be a terrible idea. Yeah, let's scrap it. I only have the red wool on me because I was busy replacing this, by the way, which also looks much better with red wool than what it had before, which I think was stained glass. By the way, ignore this. Stained glass feels like it's been around forever, but compared to 2011, it's actually quite a recent addition. So, yeah, I think I need to rethink what blocks I'm using because the redstone block isn't going to work anywhere. I think the wool works much, much better. Especially given the only bed switch we had at the time, huh? Yeah. Okay. Let's give it one last sweep through now, and let's see what we can do with this. Yeah, I think tactically reducing the number of bricks, even though they're one of the rewards here, is actually a good idea, because having bricks melded into a stone column just doesn't work as well as having some chiseled stone bricks in there, and helps to actually separate out the bricks in a way that, again, it's weird, I guess. When you replace one block with another, it doesn't perfectly match, especially when it's copper being turned into something so differently colored. But yeah, that makes a big difference, I think, too. Okay, I figured we could just keep replacing the bricks with red wool, but I think we might have gone a little bit overboard right now, to the point where maybe, actually, there is such a thing as too much red wool. It should just be the occasional accent block, and so we might have to undo a lot. Let's go do it. After fixing the red runes on the wall and replacing some of the jack-o'-lanterns with carved pumpkins, they were known as just pumpkins back then though, and also fixing a few other small things around the structure, I think we now have the full 2011 version of the trial chambers. And my instinct is to say just how fun and cool this is. I mean, all sorts of things would have to change about it. It's not just the blocks, but also the way you get around it. This big vertical room doesn't have wind charges, so you'd have to use an ender pearl and have to really know what you're doing there. There would be so many different unique challenges that you'd have to get around. Okay, definitely not including endermites, but there'd be unique things you'd have to worry about and weird new lessons to learn. And indeed, it's so fun as a way to find multiple spawners, so maybe one day you could make a farm out of this. But there is one crucial problem that this structure has, and it's the contrarian on my shoulder that says, yeah, Toycat, no matter how much you can say that, yeah, actually, this is the best structure, and if we had a 2024 feature in 2011, of course it would be the best thing they ever added. Actually, another part of me says the reason the trial chamber works is because it has a whole update's worth of features bundled inside of it. If you just have regular spawners in here, you'd pacify them once and never have a reason to come back. And then if you get all of the loot from the chests and you have enough lapis lazuli for your world, which for most people is precisely 4 blocks or so, then you'd never have a reason to come to more than one of these, and the great size might be wonderful after all the other structures we've seen, but if this was the first giant structure which just had a few things, it might actually start to feel empty. Rather than starting to feel like the greatest structure and some of the most fun that you can have, it might feel like a weird addition to Minecraft that just isn't as fully featured as the Nether Fortress or as indeed the Stronghold actually is. And indeed, I think that is the wonderful thing about the structures they started adding after this point. The Stronghold and the Nether Fortress were mighty big, but adding the small structures first, the desert temples and the jungle temples, are what allowed us to appreciate things like this. If we just had a giant lifeless structure, we might have actually come to hate it. And so maybe this is just the contrarian in me being too loud. Maybe this is actually a terrible idea, and if we are going to go back in time to 2011, then the first thing you should do is not speak to Jeb and beg him to add the trial chambers to the game. Maybe instead you should I don't know, just make sure that they work out that whole Bedrock thing a little bit better, and also beg them not to discontinue the console edition. They'd be very confused because the console edition hadn't come out yet, but if you could just go back in time, maybe those are the things you'd have to do instead of the trial chambers. Who knows for sure though? All I know is that if you enjoy my bizarre creative project ideas, it's the sort of thing that my brain is just always coming up with, and I let the intrusive thoughts win on this one. But if you want to see other cases of bizarre creativity or contrarianism in Minecraft, you can subscribe to the channel and see precisely that every single day on your homepage. For now though, I've been IBX Toycat, and I make poor decisions, so I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye!